It's time once again for the PCA Sim Racing Series. This time it's Series 12 with the Challenge class. And you'll see it all live here on RaceSpotTV. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Ewan O'Leary. Behind the scenes is our director, Ramiro Cisneros. And well, we are one day away from Friday the 13th. So hopefully, Ewan, we don't have too many superstitious drivers tonight.
Well, talking to you from the future, it is already Friday the 15th, so yeah, I hope I'm not going to bring any bad luck to everybody this evening. Yeah, the Challenge class, the final of the 4 races around Barber Motorsports Park we've had over the course of a couple of weeks here on RaceSpotTV, and it's same story. We've really got a good idea now as to how this race is going to race, how this track is going to race, I should say. The downhill braking zone at Turn 5 is easily the best overtaking chance, but as we saw last night, as the field gets a little bit slower as we go down the classes, overtaking chances do come about a little bit more often, and of course the meaningfulness, if you like, of actually getting to the end of the race is heightened a little bit in the Challenge class, with drivers who are slightly more liable to make mistakes than those in the Pro class we saw at the start of last week.
Certainly was a lot of trying to survive and make sure that you make as few of those mistakes as possible. We're in the midst of qualifying, just about to get our first lap times in. They get 10 minutes and a maximum of 3 laps to try and set their best time out here. And as always, it's once again about 30 Celsius, so roughly 80 Fahrenheit out on the track. Actually, I'm seeing 86 Fahrenheit right now on the track surface, so it is somewhat warm compared to what we saw yesterday in qualifying. And that heat in the track has played a part in all 3 of the previous races. So keep an eye on that, especially on those temperatures as we watch Alan Hales come around the last few corners in a very classic Porsche scheme with that sort of Apple computers thing going on. And then Kevin Hammond yet to set a time. Looks like he's coming down through Museum Corner. But Josh Jeppesen is currently our provisional pole sitter up there in the 73.
Yeah, 26.5 from him at the moment, but that's just the benchmark, really. It's only the first lap, and there will be plenty of drivers who, didn't get that valid opening lap in those few moments ago, and second of all, will be able to improve on their opening lap, because look at the field spread. It is a large field spread. Despite the shortness of this circuit, it's a very technical track, and so there are a lot of places where you can gain and lose time. As we go on board with Anthony DiVincenzo here, looks like he's racing from a library, although I'm sure he's not.
It's, kind of an interesting setup he's got going in there. The ceiling says he's in a garage, but his surrounding says he's got a nice little collection going on around him. But Anthony will hit the line in his number 420 machine. I believe he's already got one on the board. Yeah, he was up to 11th, and he has jumped up into, he's back down to 12th as more drivers have gone quicker than him, including Randall Ayers, who just got into 4th. But we're watching now Jeffrey Block, who sits just inside the top 10 in 9th, getting started on a new lap there. Back to Alan Hales now in the Hurricane region. I'm going to guess that's somewhere in the southeast that he hails from. Let's see if this is going to be an improvement.
hails from. Very good. Don't know if you meant to do that, but it was good. Out of the final corner and over the line for him, 26.5 to beat, and this is not going to be anywhere near pole. What I have noticed actually throughout this session so far, actually maybe more than all the others, is the proclivity for these drivers to just build up throughout the session, for their first lap not to be the best, but actually to get quicker throughout the 3 laps. An ideal driver in this one will get all 3 valid laps in, but they'll just build it up each time, with the most risk being taken on that 3rd and final lap, and as little risk as possible being taken on that very first one. So it does mean that the times do come tumbling. Just Jefferson seemingly the only one of the drivers not doing that, because after having only 1 driver within a second of him after his first time, the second time to come through, and suddenly there are 7 drivers within a second.
William Wolf just jumped up into 3rd with an improvement recently, so he's going to be starting on the inside of the second row. As we go back to Jack Stevenson and his 116 coming up around. Looks like this is the end of the lap through the carousel currently for him. So what's he got underneath him as he wraps this one up? Right now he doesn't have any time set, but he'll have enough time for one more. No, actually he won't. This is his last lap. Both of them got deleted, so this is crucial, and it is a 31-2. Unfortunately, that's going to put him in 28th, so it doesn't really improve his position all that much.
No, that's pretty much at the back, to be honest. Is one of very few drivers do not set a time. Adam Holland over the line. This is the end of his first lap, by the way, so we'll be able to see him complete a couple more, and he might just about have enough time to complete them both, but there won't be much time left. Jeremy Main is still out there on the circuit at the moment, improving. Kevin Hammond as well, but they're the only 2 in the top 10 right now who are really improving and maybe even threatening Josh Jefferson. Over the line for Main. He does go slightly quicker, but it's not quite enough.
He's still in second. He's just within a 10th of Jefferson, so it could be a close fight up at the front. This is Josh right now, but he's already completed all 3 of his laps, so he's just getting some practice. Yesterday, we saw a few drivers trying to practice that pit entry. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw a few more doing that today as well, and that's going to be a big talking point throughout this race is the pit stops, because while yes, the mistakes might be a little bit more likely for these cars, it can still be very tough to pass. And if you can use your strategy, your pit stops, to leapfrog another driver, that can get you the track position that you might so desperately crave.
There's Antonio De Silva. I think that was his that was his 4th lap being complete. He's just having a laugh going around again and again. So that's pretty much it in terms of those who are wanting to set times, other than Adam Holland, who's down in 24th. He's pretty much the only driver who has not set a time yet. As we've mentioned before, in the previous 3 races around here at Barber Motorsports Park, it is one of those circuits that's very, very important to qualify well on. The pole sitters generally have made very good starts, and not always won, but we've seen wins for the pole sitters in both of the races last week, but not yesterday, because we saw quite a remarkable comeback in the end yesterday, which was well, not the norm, let's put it that way, and I'll be surprised if we see something similar to that here tonight.
Unprecedented, I would say, as Holland actually improved up to 20th in this latest lap. De Silva, again, just getting some practice in. Now, they're allowed to do as many of these extra laps as they want. They just simply will not count. Once you use those first 3, that is it. And you can't do anything more to improve your position. So 40-some seconds left to count down. And we'll get to see someone at least try and practice that pit entry, leaving a little bit on the table, but maybe it would be wise from what we saw before to do so.
Should we mention Robbie Prescott one more time in these broadcasts?
I was trying not to. We've been so mean to the poor guy.
Oh dear, he's not coming back ever, is he? Oh dear. You're right. It is something you really need to avoid and really need to get right. I mentioned it yesterday. You would work so hard to gain half a second on the circuit through pace, but you can gain it much easier if you if you practice the pit lane entry more than you do. Because as I said yesterday, it's an underrated part of practicing for a race, I believe. Adam Holland goes over the line there to complete the session, then just about in time, but it won't matter. He stays 20th.
All right, so that means our grid is set for today, with Jefferson taking that provisional pole. We'll go through the grid here in a second, but Jeppesen comes off of a few top sixes last time in Series 11 here in Challenge class. So he's coming off some good results. Could he get himself a win for this one while they now head through the warm-up? And here is your grid. As I mentioned, Josh Jeppesen on the pole position, flanked by Jeremy Main, with Kevin Hammond in the third position and Will Wolf starting from fourth. After that, third row sees Devin Beltran, with Randall Ayers starting in the sixth position. Olin Murphy starts P7 with Antonio Da Silva to his outside. Anthony DiVincenzo will be starting in ninth spot, and then Aaron Sunday rounds out your top 10. From there, Evan Balbier will start 11th, and Jeffrey Block starts 12th.
At 13th will be Ryan McGee alongside George Poulos. Britt Danley is 15th alongside Ed Trippett. Then it's Brian Stern and Alan Hales sharing row 9. To round out the top 20, it's Andrew Hillman and Adam Holland, who we saw completing those final times. Johan Nye is 21st ahead of Robert Gazis. It is Arthur Schwartz in 23rd ahead of Aubrey Ayer, rounding out row 12.
From there, Lisa Eskridge starts in 25th. After that, it's Andy McCune, 26th position. Dave Douglas in P27. And then Manuel Goncalves in the 28th spot. Jack Stevenson will start 29th. Last of that 15th row is Chris Schussler to his outside in the Riverside region. And that is going to be it for our field. 30 cars, just squeaked over that 30 mark. So all four classes that we are covering will have 30 or more vehicles competing at the same time. But this is definitely among the smallest. I imagine that is probably by design. You might want slightly fewer cars for the newcomers coming in to have to deal with, because honestly, the more cars you have out there, Ewan, usually the more chaos.
Exactly, especially on the start, which we've seen be a factor, especially early on here at the Barber Motorsports Park. Just to give you an idea, only 33 drivers competed in the entirety of the Challenge class one season ago, earlier on in 2024. So that just shows you how many this is compared to the others. At the final race in Daytona at the end of last season, only 18 got to the finish line as far as I'm aware. And so that is a lot smaller of a number, about a third smaller than what we've got here in the opening round. And that's always to be expected, to be fair, for an opening round of a season. But, you know, there was only 3 more in the entirety of the 7 races of last season. So, yeah, you're probably right, it is by design. But this Porsche Club of America iRacing Series getting ever more popular, clearly, because as I was saying to you before, I think roughly we've done about 130 odd drivers in the last couple of weeks. Because obviously no one can do 2 categories. It's 130 unique drivers over the course of four different classes.
Yeah, this whole thing kicked off during the pandemic. They started this virtual version of the Real World Club. If you're not aware, the Porsche Club of America is a real world Porsche club. These are all people who have and drive Porsches. They decided, you know, they didn't want to stop racing and doing their track days during 2020. So they all came online, found that iRacing made for a great vehicle for that. And they have not only carried on since, but clearly have continued to grow immensely and have put on some fantastic shows. Series 1 started back there in 2020. That means they've done it 12 different times in these 4 years, but just a couple, 1 minute left really in this warm-up session. This doesn't mean anything other than drivers getting a few more practice laps in. This is a fixed setup, so they're not able to tweak anything on the cars from here after qualifying. This is all down to getting accustomed to the car and the track, with this being the not the very opening class that they get into. This is extremely important that they do get as much practice as possible.
Yeah, and it is a big difference as well, especially if you're less experienced, from qualifying with that fuel load, a maximum of 3 laps in the car, versus the full fuel load. You'd imagine every single driver will start with a full load of fuel at the start of this race. They are limited in the amount of fuel that they can take on, but it is still a lot compared to qualifying load of fuel. So you will need to get used to that, and especially for less experienced drivers, which you're more likely to see here in the challenge class. Then it is a shock to the system, and the fixed setup as well means that you can't really adjust for these conditions compared to the low weight qualifying fuel. So it is something to get used to, as we've seen, and indeed in these 5 minutes or so, a couple of spins, but that's what warm-up's for.
Yeah, and checkered flag is out on the warm-up session, so they're going to grid up. It's going to be a rolling start, so you see them line up on the back half of the circuit here, and they'll get going relatively quickly. So put yourself on the box. You're helping coach one of these drivers that might be a little bit newer to sim racing or to this series. Ewan, what advice, what things are you telling them?
I think staying out of trouble is so key, an underrated part, especially in the 2 fixed series categories. Staying out of trouble early on, but actually throughout the race as well, knowing that after those 5 minutes have passed at the start of the race, it's not over in terms of staying out of trouble. It's still a very difficult circuit to contend with, but also just taking the chances where you can. I mean, utilising the pit stop phase as much as possible, try and reduce the amount of on-track overtakes that you make, but don't be scared to do something a little bit different on strategy into the pit lane and try and make up some places that way. You'd be surprised how easy it is to overtake people by just pitting on a different lap to them, and we've only really seen one driver do something remarkably different, and that was in, I believe it was the club category this time last week. Saw someone come in after about 15 minutes, and that's the only time we've really seen it. So it'd be good to see somebody else doing that, trying to get off strategy, not being scared to get off strategy, because as I say, those are the easiest overtakes you'll ever make.
We'll see if anybody does try and do that sort of alternate approach to this, as we're going to get going very shortly here. 60 minutes of racing coming your way. Interesting motivations on that front row. I mentioned Jeppesen with a number of top 6 finishes in Series 11. Jeremy Main had 2 podiums, both of them 3rd place, so very close to a win. He's going to be starting out on the front row. Can he finally knock that one off of his goals? Pace car is in as they come around the final corner now. Kevin Hammond and William Wolf watching from behind them. They'll want to get packed up here. They seem a little spread out, and that was a talking point at the end of last week. Green flag is out, and they accelerate down to turn 1. Jeremy Main with a monster jump over our pole sitter Jeppesen. A little bit of a challenge for 3rd as well, as Hammond tries to go on the inside of Wolf but cannot get through. Behind them, they all file in, and it's looking pretty orderly.
Well, I think there was a checkup on the front straight there, and so a couple have maybe found themselves in the wall on this opening lap. But Jeppesen there was driving like someone who thought they were in control of the field after the pace car pulled in, and he could go when he wanted. But the reality is you go when the green flag flies, and Jeremy Main was by far the most attentive to that. So he's got an early lead, but he's under immediate pressure.
Jeppesen on his rear wing. Behind him, that is Wolf in the red machine being chased by Ayers. They come down in a museum corner, and Ayers almost outbreaks himself, maybe going a bit too shallow into there this time. Mostly single file behind them, though. Another look from Jeppesen, who stays glued to the rear of the 555.
Seen Evan Barber, by the way, further down the field, go off at turn 5, but that's pretty much the only driver who's come and stuck round that corner. It's been a good start for everybody, but I've got to say, Jeremy Main is being a little bit overly defensive on this opening lap. On the way towards turn 7 there, he took a very defensive line. Now he's constantly looking in his mirrors for where Josh Jeppesen is, and the reality is he's now out the windscreen because he's got through immediately, and Jeremy Main pulls into the pit lane immediately too.
Black flag. Now, that I don't see anything handed out by live race control, so that must have been a jump on the start or something to that effect from iRacing itself. That is crushing for a guy that was looking like he was going to lead this race.
Yeah, we were discussing this last week, weren't we, that in standard oval racing, the leader has to cross the line first, and we were discussing, well, that doesn't really apply here because you just go when the green flag goes, but that doesn't mean you can just go when you like. You do have to actually wait for it, and I thought Main just timed it a lot better, and Jeppesen was sleeping a bit. It turns out, it must turn out anyway, it's the only conclusion I can come to, Main jumped the start. That must be the only thing.
Yeah, that would be my suspicion as well. It seems the most obvious, but Jeppesen has immediately put himself in the same position as Main, as William Wolf is on the attack as well. couldn't quite make his way down to the inside through turn 5, but he stays behind him. That's Randall Ayers in the 67. That gray machine still in third. And they're starting to leave behind the 247 of Kevin Hammond, which would be great for these three if they can get a breakaway.
Well, it's going to be tricky if Will Wolf makes that line a common theme through turn 11 and 12. That was a little bit off colour for him. Randall Ayers just got a little bit closer, a lot closer in fact, and this allows Jefferson to maybe get away, but we're going to see plenty of those kind of small errors round here from time to time. I mentioned in qualifying the gap between the top and the bottom was very large. That's because it's a technical circuit and he can easily get it wrong, as Aubrey Ayer did here in towards turn number 1. There'll be plenty of off-track excursions like that to come.
Unfortunate this early in the race. Up and over turn 4. It looks like P2 is going to have some problems because Randall is going to slide one down the inside. He gets to the apex first. He sends it in quite deep. Great heads up by William to give him space at the apex, but that's also going to cost him the position.
Yeah, Wolf could have very much turned in within his rights there to just give a car width. And oh dear, and this is Schwartz getting into a spin and getting collected by someone off of turn 3. That's a pretty awkward moment for those with front end damage now. But yeah, Wolf could have stood his ground there and he would have been in the right, but he may have been spun around. So he did the smart thing, and as you said, very heads up driving to see that coming and turn out of it.
Saw that the Wolf was at the door and decided maybe it's better to fight another day. So he's got P2 still in front of him, but it also means that Kevin Hammond is close behind as well. They have not been able to gap that red, white, and blue 247 car quite yet. Schwartz had to come into pit lane. He's taking repairs. They do have a spare car. Curious that he did not choose to use that or forgot to check that box for some reason. For fans of Jeremy Main, that black flag turned out to be a 30-second stop and hold as Adam Holland, another one, having problems with the exit of turn 1.
And we saw someone recovering from a drive-through penalty yesterday. Surely a stop and hold 30 is not going to be overcome by Jeremy Main to go on and win this race by over 10 seconds. That would be extraordinary. That would be impossible, in fact, but we'll see. He's nearly 50 seconds off the back of the field. And by the way, the field spread, the conventional field spread from top to bottom of those who have not had problems already at 35 seconds. That's a third of a lap as we got someone tearing in here at turn 5. Don't know who that was, but it's a big incident, I'm afraid, as someone has catastrophically missed their braking point.
George Poulos in that 192. That was the purple machine that was barreling in, and the unfortunate victim was Edward Trippett, who just was at the wrong place at the wrong time. So George's already looking like he was slightly off track through turns 2 and 3. Maybe he had a little bit of dirty tires. Maybe he didn't anticipate where he thought he should be braking there, and yeah, almost collected the 86 on top of things, but he was very heads up, got on the brakes and slowed up just in time.
He got on the rear brakes a little bit there, Poulos, initially. Can't do a lot about that in a fixed setup, to be honest. It's very little. We saw this a lot last night, actually. There was a lot of issues down on the brakes, especially, and part of it is down to the fact that it is just a difficult braking zone, but surely the lack of adjustability for these drivers is not a great thing either in terms of making it less difficult. But if you want to get to the open setup leagues, of course you've got to get to the club or pro ranks, which is of course further up than what we've seen here for the last couple of nights. But it is certainly tricky down here into turn 5. Here's another example. David Beltran down the inside of Aaron Sunday and right round the outside for the driver of the 331. He will hang on to 6th place fairly comfortably.
So Sunday holds on to that P6 as they fly down into turn 8 once again, and Beltran will have to regroup, see what he can do from here. We're only 7 minutes into this race. We've had quite a bit of action in just a couple laps. Checking back in with William Wolf. He's not really had an answer for Ayers in that 67. He's still stuck in third and nowhere near enough to try and attack, at least with how things sit currently. Up at the front, Jeppesen is still our leader. It's about 0.8 of a second between himself and Ayers, who runs in P2. And Kevin Hammond continues to fill the mirrors, really, of this number 16 car.
You mentioned that Wolf doesn't have an answer to ours. I think actually the credit's got to go to the driver of the 67 for that lap there. A 26.1, the fastest lap of the race so far, by a good half second for Ayers. He had a very good lap indeed and gained 8 tenths, which pretty much halved the margin that he had to Josh Jefferson. And now all of a sudden we have a battle on for the race lead. Not that it really went away at any point, but it's certainly been just ramped up in terms of the heat now, as Randall Ayers is really starting to find his feet in this race. And this can happen. I mean, we saw it yesterday. People not quite finding, and we've seen it throughout the weeks, in fact, people not finding their feet necessarily in qualifying quite as well as they should have done. And when we get a few laps into the race, you know, we've done double the laps now in this race than what they're able to do in qualifying. Some people just need that amount of time to bed in and get used to what's around them. And right now we're seeing us certainly benefiting from that. More laps they get on here, the faster he's getting and the more pressure he's putting on the race leader.
That's DiVincenzo, who is trying to hold off Olin Murphy in behind him, swinging through the chicane on the backstretch. Very fast, swift left and right through there, but they keep it on the island, and then it's slamming on the brakes down into the tunnel turn. As we come back up in front of them between Aaron Sunday and Davin Beltran, who's going to try and send it around the outside of the penultimate corner. That gives him the inside to the final turn, but he gets pinched down and he can't get the throttle down. Aaron Sunday holds on to P6 once again. Art Schwartz, by the way, had a black flag for the incident we saw earlier where he spun across the track, and then Poulos, for his contact for outbraking himself, was also given a black flag. Both of those penalties have been served.
So already penalties having to be served, I'm afraid, and already 4 drivers having taken a visit to pit lane in just the first 6 laps of this race. This is Ed Trippett down into turn 5. He's missed his braking point. He's a long way off here. Oh, and he's found the wall. Something you don't see very often because of the gravel and the grass down there. It looks like he was struggling to find reverse as well. When you get into the gravel and the grass down there, generally it stops you from actually getting into the wall there, but actually he's missed his braking point by so much. He did find it and has probably got some front end damage now as well.
That's not going to help, not because of the aero needing to be very pristine in terms of straight line speed, but more you want that front splitter around here to give you as much turn in as you can, with all the various back and forth and different styles of corners that you have to deal with around this track. Up and over the tunnel turn once again, with Beltran not giving up. Sunday still holding them off, but unfortunately Aaron's also not been able to keep up with De Silva in front of him in the top 5. He's a long ways away by about 4 seconds at this stage. Here's the view from the car in front looking back, and the reverse.
Yeah, this is the 2 onboard views, if you like, of this battle for 6th position. What it is doing, unfortunately, is I can't tell if it's costing them a lot of time or whether they're just not as quick as the top 5, but they're certainly seeing that gap really grow, even to Antonio De Silva, who's on his own and not quite as quick as the other front 4, but he is still quicker than these 2 by the looks of things. Is that a result of these 2 fighting with one another, or are they just not quite as quick? I think Beltran certainly is quicker than Sunday, and he's showing that right now with the lines he's able to take, looking for an alternative way through almost into every braking zone here. We have a look at in the main part of the screen at a replay of Alan Hales, one of the many different lines into turn 14, that one, but unfortunately that was a wrong one.
Not really the quickest, but he does the right thing. He patiently waits for an opening and gets going. You can get penalties for unsafe re-entry in this series, so glad to see him keep a wise head on his shoulders, even in the midst of what was probably a frustrating moment. And yeah, Davin is doing everything he can, just can't seem to execute here. It does look like he's slightly quicker than that 331 car.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can just see the car behavior. You can learn a lot from car behavior, or body language, as sometimes called it. I know it's not quite true, but you know what I mean. You can just see by the way he's taking those different lines. You can see by the way he's driving that he is quicker, and he's just looking for that way through, that moment to strike, as we go right to the back in the very final battle in the field for 24th place, involving some of the drivers who have been in the pit lane already. George Poulos, who's been for a drive-through, and Jeremy Main, who's been for his stop-and-go 30, involved in this battle on the top of your screen.
Yeah, hasn't really gone through many cars at this stage. For Jeremy Main, the good news is he is still on the lead lap. Are we going to go side by side? Well, we're going to cut away from it for a bit. Or no, excuse me, we were just watching the car ahead. And Main unable to pass Poulos, so they was looking at trying to go wheel to wheel through the tunnel turn. They'll wrap up the lap, and it looks like Poulos is very brave on the brakes in comparison to Schuessler coming up into that right-hander. Cuts back, can't quite get in there. That allows Jeremy Main to maybe have a look, but no, they stay line astern down the main straight.
Well, Main's got the best run. He just doesn't have an ideal corners to do it at, and Poulos decides to throw it down the inside instead. Main's going to follow through. When he's got it wrong. He tried to follow through there, and Schuessler, who was really quite flummoxed by the Poulos car going down the inside, and Main tried to follow. I think he must have smashed that curb at turn 1, or there was contact, or both. And he's spun around a smokescreen already for the race leader, who's not only under pressure for that race lead, but also coming up to lap these guys.
And that is Jepson. Well, I wouldn't say he's under pressure. He's got about 2 seconds right now over William Wolf. Well, yeah, that's him back there in that red car.
But just as I was finishing that sentence, I think Randalaya's disconnected. I'm not seeing him in the server at the moment. I think just as I was giving him the kiss of death, he's disconnected and he's dropping down the field as I'm seeing at the moment.
That is a real shame. He was looking good up till that point. That means that this is now a battle for P2 unless he suddenly reappears, which is becoming less and less likely. So here's that replay with Jeremy Main. I don't really put this one on the 555. We'll see if the race control agrees, but you don't really expect that car to slow down that much into that corner. Yeah, the 61 kind of caught him by surprise there.
Yeah, I think there's a case to be made here for, you know, maybe not lack of confidence of racing other people, but there's a certain being too careful, like overcautious almost. I think this driver of the 61, Chris Schuessler, was almost trying to give so much room to George Poulos in the 192 there, who was going down the inside and towards turn 1. You know, it's a slightly risky move, but he was very overcautious on the way in towards turn 1. Main tried to take advantage because he is trying to make up some positions and make up some points after all in all of this. And it just got it slightly wrong, as I say, hit that curb, but also got into the side of the 61 and spun around. Now he has got through on Schuessler properly as Jeremy Main, and he's up to 26th now. But yeah, I think there's a case to be made there for sort of over caution, and there is a point where you can be almost too careful when you're racing others. Of course you need to be careful, but you can't let it go too far the other way, and for you to almost let yourself be too scared of going wheel to wheel with others like that.
Yeah, I would think Main's reasoning would be we're not going to the store for groceries here, so we gotta, at some point we gotta start racing. So we come back to the battle for now P2. We have not seen Randall Ayers, and I can confirm, I just see the message now in the sim that his connection has dropped, so he's going to have to reconnect. He'll probably go a couple laps down, even if he does. Olin Murphy in the Flying Lizard Porsche is eventually going to catch it, but not before he goes off course.
Yeah, that will cost him about 5 seconds or so as he rejoins. So just over a quarter of this race gone, and Josh Jefferson does have that little bit of breathing room now over Will Wolf and Kevin Hammond, who are both fighting for second place here. But they're not exactly going away. This is not a case of a pole sitter getting to the front and running away, which, in hindsight, we've only really seen once in the club category. This time last week, it was a pretty comfortable victory. However, in the Pro Series, the field stayed exceptionally close for the first part of the race until the pit stops. Yesterday, we saw a very abnormal situation of a driver with a penalty coming through the field to still win by miles. And today, we've got just a nice close race, although connection problems have certainly fraught this race, and Will Wolf is dipping in and out now too.
I was going to say, I'm starting to think that P2 is a little bit cursed here.
Yeah.
Now, he's actually coming back a little bit, but he can get told to park the car until his internet comes back together if they consider it too much of a problem. But he'll get a warning first if they consider it a problem. And I think Race Control is now just verbally doing that over the Race Control channel that I can hear. So they are not happy with what they're seeing from the 16.
Oh, well, he might not have even heard it himself, because I think he might be gone for good now, because he's dropping down the field without recovering those places again. He's no longer blinking, but instead he's just, well, his eyes are shut. Let's put it that way. He's gone, and it looks like, as you say, second place is cursed a little bit, because that's the second driver in second to be disconnected and leave the server through almost no fault of their own. Real shame to see. Two drivers having a very good start to this race, getting caught up in things that are not really much in their control.
A penalty just handed to Jeremy Main, black flag for dive bomb, forcing cars off the track. So they don't agree with us on that one, which I guess, to be fair, you know, it is always the car behind their responsibility to make a safe overtake, whether it's intentional or not. And he is around drivers he might not be as used to, so that's up to him to make sure. And whoa, holy cow.
Beltran down the inside, and not intentionally either. That was just an outbraking maneuver, and it was very nearly like the Judge Poulos incident earlier on. If there were more people around, then it would have been a big smash, but thankfully there was almost nobody around other than Aaron Sunday, who was looking in his mirrors and avoided the 25. But yeah, I mean, I can see why Race Control have taken that adjudication, because as you say, it is the driver behind who has to take on the responsibility of overtaking. And after all, he was right up the curb and still made contact with the 61. So if you're looking at, you know, a clean move without any contact or anything, then you know, Main certainly didn't manage that. But he'll be very disappointed to have picked up another penalty.
So William Wolf officially now also has dropped connection to the server, which was, I think, kind of a duh at that point. But just to confirm for our audience, and now Kevin Hammond is probably thinking these are the easiest second place passes I've ever made. But let's hope that now he doesn't also fall victim to that. To his credit, he has actually caught Jeppesen. It's down to 9/10 of a second. He's gaining.
That's the third driver who's been caught catching Jeppesen. It's almost as if he's got an internet laser that he's just taking out people with, because he's been caught by a few drivers now, but he's still holding on to this race lead. I'm not suggesting he's doing anything wrong, of course, but it's certainly a nice stroke of luck that he's got. This is not a good stroke of luck, though. He's in traffic, and this is going to be a story of this race. Already only 21 drivers remain on the lead lap, and the field spread is very large in the challenge class, largest of any class we've covered in the last couple of weeks. And Jeppesen, as the leader, is the first one to get onto these lap drivers, and he's been caught out by this slightly. Kevin Hammond got a much better run through lap traffic that time round. This race for the lead is very much on.
Very much too hard into the tunnel turn for the 73, and whatever advantage he had is dissipated now. Look at how close Kevin is, and is looking a lot stronger coming off the final turn. He gains a little bit of ground, but it's just not enough, and he's not going to be able to try and pass down into turn one. He disagrees, or at least was trying to get into the head of Josh.
And you can very much do that, especially towards turn number one. Just as you're turning in, you'll have one last look in the mirrors maybe, and you might just get thrown off by that. But what you've got to remember in the lead here is that they're not likely to make a big dive bomb anytime soon. Focus forward, don't look in the mirrors too much. You can be very susceptible to mirror driving if you do that, and you've got someone like that right behind you. You will go slower if you're checking your mirrors a lot. I know it's important to make sure you're not turning in on anybody or whatever, but you do also need to focus forward on where you're going. And Jeppesen has just got to make sure he is looking out the windscreen more than he is looking in the mirror, because otherwise he will go slower, as they just passed somebody in the grass at turn 8.
Aubrey Iyer, it looks like, gets back on track. But, I mean, Kevin Hammond, as I said, didn't have to make a pass to get third, didn't have to make a pass to get second. That if there's one pass that he probably wants to make, it'll be satisfying if he can overtake for the lead. As we jump backwards a little bit in the meantime, check in on one of our battles, at least further into the mid-pack. And this is DiVincenzo over Olin Murphy. We saw Olin have a little bit of a hiccup coming through turn 5, but clearly didn't cost him too much. He's within the top 10, looking at maybe trying to pass for 6th.
This is the Aubrey incident. Oh, that's awkward. And a big jump down the hill. It's very steep down there, of course, and I am pretty lucky not to hit anything in the end. You were talking about retro liveries earlier on. Do you remember the Flying Lizard Porsche livery that Murphy's sporting here? Fantastic livery, I think. One of those liveries that maybe I resonate with a lot more because it was when I was getting into sports car racing, and that's the Porsche they were using at the time, the silver and red, and he's reflected it very well in the newest edition of the Porsche Cup car we're using this season.
Yeah, and honestly, it's very iconic. It's kind of strange for me nowadays. At times I do some work with SRO, and Flying Lizard is often in the Aston Martin, or lately they've also run the BMW, I believe, or Mercedes. So kind of, kind of hopped out of...
Tell them, get back in the Porsche. We can't, loads of teams have changed around these manufacturers recently. Get back in the Porsche, for goodness sake. That's where you're meant to be.
I mean, all the fans watching this, they would probably agree. This is, they're all going to be Porsche fans likely watching this race and trying to size them up. Here comes Olin with a good run briefly, but not good enough as we dash back to Kevin. And Josh has responded. The gap now up to his second between them after he was under quite a bit of pressure earlier on. We're encroaching upon the halfway mark of this race, and this is probably when he does need to push as they get closer to the chance for pit stops.
Yeah, they do. If you're going to split it in half, then we're pretty close now to getting halfway through this race. And by the way, a few tenths of that 1.1 second margin came through the final corner there. Kevin Hammond just got slightly onto the grass and was, I think, a bit nervous about getting the power down while on the grass, and sensibly so as well. Didn't want to find himself in the inside wall, and so just took the time loss and lost 7 tenths over the course of the previous lap. So needs to gain some of that back again before he can start applying pressure again and build that all up. Is that a replay of a replay, or are we seeing another one for I'm not sure.
I think that's the same one. That looks extremely similar, so I'm pretty sure that's just a different angle to show you how much air he got coming down the hill. Now, I just noticed as we come back to our leader that it's really become a 2-horse race. Unless we have more Friday the 13th hijinks for both of them, it's 15 seconds to Antonio De Silva. He is a long ways away already.
This is Manuel Gonçalves, who's gone off down at turn 5. That was right in front of Darren Beltran, but I think they're on different laps. In fact, I'm very sure they're on different laps, actually. De Silva's been losing a lot of time recently. His last lap was a 1:30.5, which is very slow compared to where he should be. It must have been a mistake on that lap or a lot of traffic, but that's a gap that has opened up quite a lot in recent times. There's Brian Stern spinning, turns 2 and 3. As traffic now becomes a real factor for these leaders, especially Jepson just negotiating some more of it there through turn 4, and Hammond does the same.
It looks to be a bit more of a problem here than it was in the pro or in the club classes in our first week here at Barber. It's kept things tight between P1 and P2 for much of this race, and we definitely want to see that battle. Now, I'm sure Josh does not, but not that we don't want Josh to win. We just want to see a good fight for the victory today as we check back in with 10th position. Johan Nye leading Brian Stern and Adam Holland in a 3-way fight.
It's one of the larger groups now. Feel very much split apart into 1s and 2s, but good to see a little bit of a train going on for 10th place, and Nye's going to surely have to defend here. Brian Stern just looking to the outside, then switches to the inside, but you've got to be careful of missing your braking point down there. Pulls it up very nicely and should be 10th. That is a very good overtake. When you're so far to the inside like that, you can so easily miss your braking point, because generally into turn 5, you're looking for something on the right. Well, the static objects on the right-hand side were a long way away from Brian Stern there, but he still managed to find one, and he's now got 10th place regained.
And Nye going to lose 2 positions in 1 lap. Lisa Eskridge with the Powerpuff Girls scheme. Unfortunately, not experiencing spice or anything nice right now. So back onto the track she goes, and at least is able to carry on. That'll put her in 19th.
I don't know what any of that means that you just said, but I'll nod and smile.
Oh, am I that old now? Oh, good God.
I didn't say that, but I'm just saying I don't know what you're on about. Yeah, 19th for Lisa Eskridge so far. By the way, was of course the stalwart of last season's challenge class, finished 9th in the standings at the end, and there are a few returning candidates, by the way, tonight from those who were in the challenge class earlier on this year in the season. I think George Poulos is the best placed of them. He was one of the championship contenders, one of the 4 championship contenders in the widest open championship race, in my opinion anyway, of the 4 we had last season. He ended up finishing 4th after winning the final race at Daytona. Unfortunately, he hasn't had a great night tonight, but good to see some returning drivers, plenty of returning drivers indeed. I think 6 or 7 of the top 10 have come back again for season 12.
Still haven't had any of them come in for a pit stop yet, at least a scheduled one. I do see Andrew Hillman was in 15 laps ago, but I think that was to get some damage repaired or something, because that would have been very early in this race. They're catching some more traffic. And that's very good heads up by Jack Stevenson. He pulls off to the side. He does not want to be a factor in this fight.
Yeah, very good lap traffic behaviour, if you like, and there is a knack to it, certainly being lapped and just staying out the way. It sounds very simple, but you can get it wrong very easily. And thankfully just stayed out the way of the 2 leaders who were able to slip through very easily. Kevin Harmon didn't get a very good run off of turn 5 though, so from 3 tenths behind over the line in a very close battle, Jepson just pulls out a few tenths again. It's very much a seesawing battle as we approach halfway.
And if watching this hasn't convinced you how much more the traffic has played a part of things, remember in the other races we had maybe about 8 to 10 drivers at the end that were lapped, that didn't finish on the lead lap. They have already lapped up to 17th place here today, and we still have half the race left to go. So yeah, they are rushing through the back of the field.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, the field spread a lot larger in this class than what we've seen in the others, and that's generally going to happen as you go down the classes. The field spread should get a little bit bigger, but it's especially pronounced here in the challenge class. If things stay sort of linear in terms of time loss for everybody, now that's a very silly thing to say because it almost never does, but let's imagine it does, then we're going to have about 8 on the lead lap by the end of the race. So very few compared to any of the other classes.
All right, so you heard it here, folks. We'll see if Ewan O'Leary has his crystal ball out as we watch Davin Beltran still in a fight.
So I thought he was firing off there. He was so wide, but actually he's turned it into quite a nice exit. But he is clearly quicker, isn't he? Just still not able to find a way through.
And they're catching De Silva. In fact, I think they caught him many laps ago because I recall seeing that green car relatively close to them. And some of that was, as you said earlier, he had a couple laps where it seemed traffic just cost him roughly in the range of about 4 seconds total, which can definitely do some serious damage. Oh, that is much faster and wider there for Davin, but it doesn't produce a position. Good to know he's got a lot more speed on entry and can handle it, though.
Yeah, I think for De Silva, it's almost as if, because there's such a big lead for the top 2 at the moment, it's almost as if he is the leader as far as the people being put a lap down for the first time are concerned. You know, people often, as Kevin Hammond comes in, by the way, pretty much on halfway, when the leader comes around and you're being lapped for the first time, it can be a bit of a shock for those who are being put a lap down and you don't really know how to deal with it. That can mean the leader loses a bit more time compared to the others, but there's such a big gap for De Silva ahead of him that actually it will be almost a shock again to those being put a lap down for the first time, because it's been so long since they were lapped for the first time that when De Silva comes along, it's almost a surprise for a second time.
Yeah, that's a good point. And hopefully everybody has been paying well attention by that point. Kevin finishes pit stop 9.8 seconds. Nothing super quick, but also not slow. But unfortunately for him, he emerges just behind Olin Murphy, so he's not going to get clear track, at least initially, as he returns to the circuit. Beltran versus Sunday rages on and just will not quit. Aaron's going to have that rear bumper memorized by the end of this race.
Beltran got through in towards turn 1, by the way. We just caught a glimpse of it a few moments ago. So for the first time, Beltran onto the podium. Yeah, Sunday, by the way, being cheered on by his wife as far as YouTube chat goes. And hello to everyone who's cheering on family members, friends and family or whatever, here in the stream tonight, and or indeed retrospectively. Unfortunately, Sunday losing that position though in towards turn 1 that time round. But Beltran though did look quicker for quite some time, so the surprise for me is that it took so long, not that it's happened at all.
Same, and apologies to Davin. I got so caught up in things I didn't realize that he had made that overtake. They've got Andrew Hillman here, who's kind of interrupting the fight for what is now going to be for second position, but should be for third overall, and not exactly pulling aside. Granted, this is not Formula One style rules with those blue flags, so Andrew does not have to leap out of the way if he does not want to. He is going to go a little bit wide here. Is this his indication that he's trying to let them through? If it was, it didn't work.
Yeah, some people do take a wide line and a good exit for the. Now he gets out of the way though. Didn't want to lose loads of time, because if he let them all free through in one go, then he would have really lost out himself. So didn't want to do that, rather do it in 2 chunks, and so he's been as little of a factor as he possibly could have there, really, in the battle for second place. And Beltran does continue to close that gap, so the battle for second will now really rage, I think. Oh dear, we're just seeing the battle for 11th in the top of your screen. I think Robert Gellers has just been off the road in towards turn 1, and maybe someone else as well. There was a lot of smoke down there.
Not exactly sure, but yeah, Johan Nye trying to hold off Adam Holland as we come back to Robert Gallez, and he's back on track and rolling, so that's the good news for fans of his. Where is he right now? Looks like he's 13th after that, so Stern, I think, must have gotten by, and Stern actually had an incident recently as well, so that'll give him at least one of his positions back as we continue to watch the battle for P2. Davin with the clearer track in front of him has made up ground on that 24 relatively quickly. Sunday doesn't look like he's holding on, at least with an iron grip, but he's also not dropping away super quickly.
No, he's maybe benefiting from the fact that drivers ahead of him just showing him some lines that he's picking up on here as we have a look at Robert Gelles in towards turn 1 here. I mentioned there was a lot of smoke and cars spun around. Is this why he pulled to the outside of the 35, I think that is, of Aubrey Ayer, and Gales gets into the gravel. Ayer also spins around and is naturally now down on pit lane.
That was a lapped car that he was trying to go by, so it was not for position. Things heating up now for second spot once again. Beltran got De Silva a little bit offline, but couldn't capitalize on it. They come up to the tunnel turn once again as we ride on board with Aaron Sunday. He's got a front row seat to the action. If he plays his cards right, he could have an opportunity like that mistake right there from Davin.
Does Beltran just cut his losses and come in? And he does. Very smart racing instincts from David Beltran there to realise that he made a mistake through 13, although he doesn't need to be on the pit limiter from now. It'll cost himself loads. Oh dear, with that.
Oh no.
He hasn't practiced that, has he? He's not taken my advice from yesterday, but anyway, he's now in. At least he's not spared, I suppose, but he's been on the pit limiter for a lot longer than he should have been there. But good racing instincts initially to acknowledge the mistake through turn 13, see in his mirrors that Aaron Sunday was coming up on him, and decide, now's the chance to cut my losses and come in, because I've just created that gap to De Silva. I can fire into the pit lane at full speed instead of having to slow up. And so that part was good. Being on the pit lane limiter for so long was not.
No, that will definitely cost him, and could potentially cost him 1, maybe 2 positions. Hammond, who pitted earlier, is still in 5th behind Olin Murphy, has not been able to overtake that car since he emerged. So not sure if this is going to work out for the 247, unless Olin is a lot quicker than some of the leaders and we just didn't realize it. In the meantime, the 331 of Aaron Sunday carries on. Now, here's the question, Ewan. If you're Aaron, do you respond to try and cover him off, or do you try and stay out and keep going?
I think it's going to be very difficult to finish ahead of Beltran almost no matter what happens, here. That's Johan Nye, by the way, going for a spectacular off at turn 11 and 12 and finding the Arco as well. That's going to be a bit of damage to repair for him. Yeah, I think your best bet for Sunday here is to hope that Beltran gets caught up with others, having pitted early. Hope that he gets caught up in traffic on his outlaps here, and you can jump him in that way. Then maybe you can get ahead of him and stay ahead of him in the final 20 minutes. But for me, I'd be focusing on De Silva here. He's got a better chance, in my opinion, Aaron, Sunday of finishing ahead of Antonio De Silva than he has of finishing ahead of Beltran. And so he might as well try and finish ahead of one of them rather than trying to finish ahead of both and then ending up finishing behind them both.
I can report that Beltran has come out just behind Evan Barber, so he might also find himself a little bit held up. So this could work out well for Aaron Sunday in the end, as we watch him continue to chase De Silva, who goes a little bit wide. The door opens, and Aaron's not going to wait for a second invitation. He puts his foot through the door, but he can't completely clear it. He's going to have to try and get his elbows out, and he does. He is going to move himself into P2.
Well, De Silva was coming back in there into 11, but it was very briefly. So Sunday is now in second place, and now he's just got to focus behind him on De Silva and finishing ahead of him, trying to see how they can strategize their way through this one. If I was Sunday, I'd be staying out for pretty much as long as possible with the clean air he's got in front of him. Really use this advantage and try and drive it home, especially with Murphy catching De Silva here. He might be able to just distract De Silva and embroil him in another battle, because Murphy is catching them both with the laps that he's putting in at the moment. You can see the grey and red Porsche in the background. But in terms of Beltran being behind Barber, I don't actually think that's the worst thing for him. I think Beltran's going to be ahead of both of these, because don't forget, Barber had that spin at turn 5 on the opening lap. I think he's quicker than his position has shown so far this race.
Ooh, that's a good point. I had forgotten about that. So yeah, it's looking pretty good for him at this stage. De Silva falling down to third. Now, Jeppesen, by the way, 21 seconds ahead of Aaron Sunday. 73 looked under threat early on, but it seems the racing gods are smiling upon him today, as after his rivals either disconnected or took themselves out, he's been unfazed.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin Hammond is still in 5th position at the moment and still could be a factor, but at the moment it's a very big advantage for Jeppesen as Beltran gets down the inside of Barber. Clearly not quite impressed with the speed of Barber enough to stay behind him, but they did both catch De Silva and Sunday on that last lap, unsurprisingly I suppose, but they were quicker than Hammond as well, which is no mean feat. So clearly Barber is not slow, but Beltran was clearly feeling he was quicker, and so he's now through and is in 7th place.
So there's one overtake done, and it's 15 seconds up the road to Di Vincenzo. So I think he's in a good spot here where he can carry on, barring any lap traffic that he has to overtake. As long as he's got this clear air, then he can try to make up some time and pick it back up. You mentioned Kevin Hammond also trying to kind of do the same to Jeppesen. He's close on pace to Josh from what I could check. It's a bit of a back and forth, so it could be tight on whether or not he winds up close or in front of him, especially considering it's looking like about, looks like 27. It's been up between 26 and 27 seconds between them right now.
It's certainly a 2-horse race. I think that much is becoming clear in the remaining 20 minutes as we go up to Ollie Murphy, just behind Antonio De Silva in the green and black, although he's a lot braver through the curves there. And who's that off? One of the lap cars up ahead of them off the road through 9 and 10. Thankfully these two don't get involved with that, but Murphy backing off there has cost him just under a second. De Silva was a bit braver through that section of corners, and now they think again as they go past pit lane whether and when they will be coming into pit lane. Just over 15 minutes remaining. They're still not pitting. Where did we get to yesterday in terms of longest stint? Wasn't there someone coming in with about 6 minutes left or 8 minutes left, something like that?
Yeah, somewhere around there. I think it was about 8 minutes or so. So yeah, they seem to be able to go pretty darn late out here. By the way, just in front of this battle, Sunday, actually, I was about to say he's been massively consistent in the clean air. And while the last lap wasn't consistent, he went from a 28.4, 28.4, 28.3 to a 27.8. He suddenly turned up the wick, and the 3.31 is looking a lot more solid, a lot more confident now that he's got nobody in front of him.
Yeah, and maybe that has been the problem, that he's had someone in front of him for the last few laps, and now that he's free, he's suddenly showing us what he can do. Murphy's got through onto Silva now as well, by the way. On the way towards turn 5, though, he pulled back to the racing line, what I would describe as a bit early. If De Silva was even a metre too late in the braking zone, he would have been straight into the back of Murphy, and Murphy would have been off the road in the gravel. So he'll be very thankful that De Silva got that braking zone right, and he's now able to march on with 3rd place. This final spot on the podium is very much under discussion between Aaron Sunday, Davin Beltran, and maybe Olin Murphy as well.
Guess who's coming to dinner? Kevin Hammond is starting to catch up to them pretty quickly here, so that could be interesting. Oh, Jeremy Main finding another little jump around this track. There is not a rallycross course around here, believe it or not, but these cars would have you. Yeah, I agree. I think it'd be really fun, but apparently a few drivers finding ways to make it into one today. Olin Murphy now into P3. Can he run down Aaron Sunday? Or could he maybe undercut him, because Olin still needs to take his pit stop. Now we got Andy McCune, who we saw off track a little bit earlier. This is a different incident to me. No, that is the one, actually. It looks like he just kind of slid to a halt off the side.
Yeah, that was the spin that we saw these guys passing, actually, in the smoke screen as well, that these guys passed pretty innocuously a lap or so ago. And there is Kevin Hammond. He is now involved with this battle, and this could be a problem. This may be why Josh Jefferson has left it so late, because there's the indication of who stopped and who hasn't. Hammond is, of course, the first driver to have stopped, but if he gets caught behind De Silva for even a few corners too long, any chance of undercutting Jefferson will go out the window.
And I was keeping an eye on Jefferson as this was happening. He actually just got held up massively by traffic just now, so he also is struggling trying to get by cars. This could still be tight, but it all depends on how hard Kevin has to battle with Antonio De Silva, who seems to be lacking pace late in the race. He's been overtaken a couple times. Ooh, and Davin Beltran, wow. Oh no.
Wow, that battle for the last spot on the podium just gets a little bit more interesting. What a great rejoin that, but he's got away with it, I think, Beltran. So now down to 8th place. He's 6 seconds off Barber, but will that be the end of it because of the damage that Beltran surely would have got after hitting the wall at the exit of turn 1 there? So maybe it's just between Aaron Sunday and Olin Murphy now for that final 3rd place.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they're, just as I say that, official warning, car 25, unsafe re-entry, no penalty. Yeah, I'd say that would merit a warning, because that was pretty risky there. And Davin, no surprise here, comes in to, I think, either take repairs or a spare car. The Radio Shack machine of Dave Douglas doing what we've seen many cars do during all 3 previous races out of turn 5, and just getting a little half spin, getting on the throttle. Now it's down to Sunday and Murphy. Sunday has P2. Murphy wants it, but this is likely going to be the battle for 3rd. Oh, and Jefferson has just pitted.
Here we go. So 15 minutes remaining. This is the moment in the race. Kevin Hammond has just been stuck behind De Silva for the last couple of laps. Jefferson clearly believes he's been given that little bit of a window to come in and now stay ahead of Kevin Hammond, despite the fact that Hammond has just got through to 4th because of Antonio De Silva deciding to come in. This could be a very well-timed pit stop for Josh Jefferson, although it's going on a bit long. 11.6 seconds, and Kevin Hammond, doesn't matter really, is ahead by over 3 seconds.
Yeah, it would have been about 1 second between him if Josh had matched his pit stop, but 2 of those seconds are definitely down to the time spent in his stall. So Kevin Hammond effectively will be your new leader once the pit cycle rounds out, but this is the battle for lead on track right now. Sunday versus Murphy, both of them trying to go as long as possible and have at least 5 more minutes, from what we can tell, that they can carry this on, although Olin Murphy goes way too deep and does not get a slowdown penalty, but certainly probably scared himself.
Yeah, he made absolutely sure he didn't get a slowdown there, as he just had to tuck in line through turn 8, just make sure that he satisfied the racing regulations in terms of track limits, and did just that. the curves that time, but he will draw confidence from the fact he's gained so much time. He's closed this margin by such an amount of seconds, and now he's got to strike because Aaron Sunday comes in. Murphy has got to use that lower fuel load, and the fact that he's trying to overcut right now on Aaron Sunday, I don't know, unless Sunday was running out of fuel here, he might have had to come in, but if he had the choice, then he should have stayed out there, in my opinion. Stay in front of Murphy, use the track position advantage, because he was showing himself to be not quite as quick, but he's in now anyway, and he may well have been forced to.
Sunday did get on the pit limiter quite early as well. Not as early as we saw before. 7.8 seconds. An incredibly quick stop. Now, Jeppesen and Hammond have both gone by. No surprise. We saw them lose quite a bit of time earlier in the race. He emerges third of those who have stopped. Olin Murphy, we won't get to see whether or not he stops for another half a lap here. And again, he can carry on for at least a couple more, but not many.
Not many. As you say, we got to about 8 minutes to go yesterday before we started to see finally the longest stints of the week coming to an end. And Murphy may well need to do something similar, because he needs to utilize that low fuel load. So we were talking about on the opening night, actually. Generally, overcutting in tin tops does work better than undercuts, depending on a million things, of course. But in this situation, I think Murphy's got the advantage. He does seem to be a little bit quicker as this race is going on anyway. He seems to be getting quicker. He's got, using that low fuel, he can hopefully go quicker, but it's only going to be for one lap by the looks of things. He needed to put in a strong lap, and now he's done all he can. He's into pit lane, trying to stay ahead of Aaron Sunday. This is the fight for third place.
So the stop time, 7.8 seconds for Aaron Sunday. Cone to cone, 30.4. Olin Murphy looking for his pit stall. Takes a bit of time to get down this straightaway, even though it's not the longest pit lane. Hits his box cleanly. So what's it going to be as the seconds tick upwards? Up to 7 seconds. It's going to be a longer stop, 9.4, about 2 seconds longer. Aaron Sunday sneaks on through and is now definitely going to be third place.
Yeah, and he's clearly gained some time in the in-laps and out-laps too. Not sure whether it was Murphy's in-lap that was poor or whether Sunday's out-lap was good, or maybe a combination of the two. But the fact that the gap is 3.5 seconds has surprised me. 1.5 of those seconds will have been in pit stop time, but 2 seconds gained on track for Aaron Sunday. I don't really know where that's come from.
Clearly being quite quick when he needed it. So we got 10 minutes left to go, and coming down the hill, Anthony DiVincenzo is the last one that we need to stop. Yes, I'm pretty sure that's the case. Jeremy Main still needs to stop, but he's much farther down. As far as those on the lead lap, at least, the 420 is the only one holding up the order. So he runs in third, but that is not a true third at this stage. This has certainly been a fascinating end to our runs at Barber here. But it's looking like Kevin Hammond, who started from third and didn't have the greatest start to the race. Remember, he got passed pretty much, I believe, in the first corner, made that back up and then some. And it doesn't look like he's gotten away completely clean. Am I seeing a little bit of damage on that nose?
Yeah, I think so. Looks a bit crumpled to me. I don't remember where he would have picked that up from. We might not have seen it, but just to that front right slightly, it looks slightly crumpled to me. And it looks like, to me, front to rear contact with somebody. So probably as he's been lapping someone, he's given them a tap as if to say, get on with this or get out of the way. And he's done some pretty harmless damage to this front end.
Yeah, at least if there was any sort of contact out there with a lapped car, it's been something that did not merit a penalty for him. So 4.5 seconds over Josh Jeppesen, who was leading the majority of this race. Almost kind of eerily similar to the pro class race, as Andy McCune has a bit of a spin and then winds up on the racing line. Thankfully, is able to get out of the way so that doesn't cause any problems for anybody. But and we've kind of bookended where these races where the leader stayed out long, or at least relatively long, and it didn't work quite as good as we usually think for that overcut. It's the early pitting car that takes advantage.
And there have been a couple of mirrors to the Pro Class race with this one. I think the battle between the two at the front certainly an example of that, as Anthony DiVincenzo now makes his way into the pit lane, the final driver to do so. Quite a technical entry, of course, and he's made it in from third position, and that allows Aaron Sunday to take that position. He is being caught by Olin Murphy, by the way, and so maybe there's another story to tell there, but the story for the front two does seem to be over. They only pitted one lap, or a few laps apart, I should say. 10 laps apart in the end, seemed like less, but the race was flying by. Hammond was clearly able to use that undercut to great advantage over Josh Jefferson, so even though it was over a larger scale, something similar was happening than in the Pro Class. But another one of the differences, of course, the pole sitter doesn't look like they're going to win here. Josh Jefferson is the pole sitter, of course, and on course for second place.
Did we see some contact from Antonio Da Silva? Because he just got a black flag. It says did not have position. I'm assuming that means to try and make an overtake. But whatever the case, he's sitting in fifth right now that the pit stops have gone through. But that's going to go away quickly because a drive-through will send him at least down to sixth, maybe to seventh. But Adam Holland is about 30 seconds behind. So maybe the worst of it will just be going one position down.
Maybe, but it's not a great look on his driving that he's suddenly 30 seconds away from the podium places he was so close to earlier on in the race, and holding his own while he was there. But a number of mistakes have been made throughout, and unfortunately he's way down in fifth place now, and even under pressure for that fifth by Anthony DiVincenzo, who's made that final stop of the race and is really closing in. By the way, I don't want to gloat, but there are 8 cars on the lead lap at the moment, and there's 6 minutes to go. I'm getting nervous. My prediction is, at the moment, we're doing okay.
Go get a lottery ticket. Now, as we're watching this battle for 11th, I kind of hope we go back to what we're watching on the other screen between Sunday and Murphy. That flying lizard car is a lot closer. He's reeled him in. In fact, he's looking at making a pass here, but he has to check up as maybe he got a little too greedy off the corner.
Yeah, he just saw an opening there, but Aaron Sunday's car was in the way after all. He would have had a better exit if the two could have ghosted through one another, but unfortunately you've got to work your way around actually on the circuit, and Murphy wasn't able to do that on this occasion, but he's certainly getting into the head of Aaron Sunday here. He's certainly applying the pressure in all the right ways, and with about 4 laps to go, there's surely only one way this battle can go. It's just a case of whether he can do it in the time frame remaining. We always get to this stage in the race, and we have done for the last 3 races. Same again here. Murphy has got the speed to do it. On paper he's quicker, but does he have the time remaining to execute what is a difficult and long-winded place to make overtakes?
And I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on here. That 7.8 second stop, did Aaron Sunday cut it just a little too close? Is he having to save fuel? And maybe that is why he is so much under threat, and partly why he caught so quickly, because at times it looks like he's taking some of these corners quite slow.
I'd be surprised if he's saving fuel, because he's not taken on the least amount of fuel of anybody in these last 2 weeks, not even the least amount of anyone in this race, but he is losing positions now, although he's still third because Josh Jefferson has dropped out the session.
Unbelievable. And he was in second place again.
Wow.
What is going on? Did he come back for a second?
For a brief second, so he's still somewhat around.
I'm showing in the sim, it says dropped connection. So he must be gone for good now.
Oh, my 8 on the lead lap's gone down the pan as well. Disaster.
Shouldn't be making bets on Friday the 13th.
Oh no. Yeah, wow. Friday the 13th was certainly struck, because the fact that it's been 3 drivers at the same position as well is even weirder.
It is one of the most bizarre developments I think I've ever seen. And I've seen some strange things over 11 years of doing this on iRacing, but the 019 now finds himself maybe in a P2, although the lap traffic makes things difficult out of turn 16. That was Chris Schuessler. Thankfully, is now out of the way. Aaron Sunday not able to use that to his advantage. And what about Jeremy Main, who briefly looked like he would lead a lap, but did not even get to do that as he had to serve a penalty early on. Comes back to 15th place. In fact, I think he served 2 penalties in this race, if I remember correctly.
He's certainly been down pit lane at least twice. I'm not sure how many of those were for penalties. In fact, I'm not entirely... No, he must have fueled at some point, but I think you might be right. He might have done 2 penalties at some point. Yeah, and he can be pleased with today's race, I think, Jeremy Main. He's shown that he's got the speed, and as long as he cleans up the rest of it, he will be maybe even a championship contender, certainly a race-winning contender at some point throughout the season. So he's got reasons to be cheerful after this one, I think, and plenty of other drivers do as well. Jeremy Main still searching for that race win. He wasn't able to do that last season, but he did get on the podium a couple of times, so there's no reason why he can't do that again this season.
Nobody breathe on the modem of Olin Murphy because he's in 2nd place. And we've seen that is not a safe place to be here today. They've got, I think, 2 laps to go, it looks like, to wrap this one up. Oh, he sends it very wide, and Sunday gives a think about trying to sneak through there, but the door is shut rather quickly.
Yeah, so Murphy over the line in 2nd. I think he'll be okay, but Sunday is going to apply the pressure as much as he possibly can here towards the end. 7.9 seconds in the pit lane for Sunday, of course, got him that advantage in the first place. And he's off. Is Murphy off? He was very wide at 2 and 3, and he is off. Well, you want to take that wide line, of course, to benefit your runoff of turn 3, but he's just gone too wide, and he might well have just thrown away his 2nd place.
My goodness, Aaron Sunday. We said earlier today, before the race started, that it's often in these lower classes about making the fewest mistakes. And for the 3-3-1, that's very much going to give him a 2nd place if he could just bring it home from here for a lap and a half. Here is Olin Murphy. I just sent it way too hot into the corner.
Yeah. As I say, you want to run wide because you want to use the slope of the curve and the exit you get off of turn 3 there, but you don't want to go that wide. That's why a lot of people don't take that risk by going that wide, because you can get pulled off by the grass. And so Murphy, I'm afraid, has dropped down to 3rd place and is frankly not left himself enough time to recover from that with only 1 to go.
His only hope is that Aaron has some sort of similar mistake in this last lap. They're getting the white flag now as Kevin Hammond has already taken it himself. There he is in the red, white, and blue machine for the Gold Coast region with just a few more corners left to go in 18.8 seconds over the next nearest car. Somebody going off just in front of him. That is Andy McCune, who thankfully is patient enough not to pull off in front of him. So let's hope he doesn't get any more scares like that.
He'll be praying for less lap traffic, just a nice, easy ride to the end. He has come under pressure from a lot of drivers here in this race. Let's not forget, he was obviously around Jefferson earlier on in the race. Will Wolf was right up there earlier on too before his disconnection. By the way, Jefferson still hasn't re-emerged in the server, which is a real shame. But yeah, so many different challenges at Randall Ayers as well, of course. But Kevin Hammond has come over them all, and he has looks like he's going to win the opening round of the season.
Out through the last couple corners, he knows he can celebrate this one. Maybe didn't start on the pole, but he didn't need it. He came out ahead and shining as Sweet Home Alabama sees victory for Kevin Hammond.
18 seconds, one of the biggest we've seen as well in these last couple of weeks. Thoroughly deserved over Aaron Sunday or Olin Murphy. Murphy's got there again in the final couple of corners on the very final lap by the looks of this, as lap traffic's got involved. Sunday's off the road, Murphy's on the on the road, and he's not quite got the power to do it with a short run to the line, but that got uncomfortably close.
Don't think Manuel Gonzalez is going to be getting any sort of Christmas card from Aaron Sunday there. Just about cost him that 2nd place. It was 3/10 at the line as they crossed. But Aaron Sunday with that P2. 7 cars are going to finish on the lead lap, with the last of them being Brian Stern. Honestly, that's still mighty impressive, Ewan. I mean, that was a really good call that early in the race.
I'm annoyed it's one off, I've got to be honest. I thought I was going to have a real moment of glory, but internet problems for multiple. If you think about it, notwithstanding the internet problems, the 3 that dropped out, you would expect them to probably finish on the lead lap. So I probably wouldn't have been correct either way. But I was very close to having a very clever moment there, but not to be today. Maybe next time.
Indeed. So here is your finishing order, with the win going to Kevin Hammond and Aaron Sunday coming home in P2. Also, we need to point out he went from 10th to 2nd. Olin Murphy finished P3 with Anthony DiVincenzo in 4th, and Antonio Da Silva still got 5th place in spite that late penalty. Adam Holland was P6 after he started 20th. Absolutely amazing. Brian Stern was 7th after starting in 17th. Also an incredible run. Evan Bobbier, first one lap down in 8th, with Robert Gales in the 9th position, and Dave Douglas in 10th after starting 27th. Ryan McGee was 11th today. Jeremy Main from 2nd to 12th. But again, damage limitation was mighty fine from the 555, as Edward Trippett was 13th, and then Johan Nye in the 14th spot. Alan Hales comes home P15. Then we get to 2 lap down cars to Jeffrey Block in 16th and Randall Ayers in 17th. Jack Stevenson in 18th, coming up from 29th. Manuel Gonçalves 3 laps down in 19th. And then Andrew Hillman rounds out your top 20. It is Chris Schuessler 21st, Andy McCune 22nd, and William Wolf 23rd. Then it's Josh Jeppesen having to settle for 24th. I'm not sure if he even got to see the checkered flag, whether or not he reconnected. Art Schwartz 25th, Lisa Eskridge 26th, Beltran 27th, and then our 3 DNFs in Iyer, Poulos, and Danley. I think we've got Kevin Hammond ready to chat with us. So let's see if he's mic'd up and ready to go. And maybe if we can solve the mystery on what happened with that front bumper there. Kevin, congratulations on the win. You pulled a very similar move to the pro class and pitted a little bit earlier and wound up coming out ahead. Is that what you expected, that you would emerge in the lead afterwards?
Yeah, I saw a little bit of traffic up ahead, and it was going to be tough to pass them. So I figured I'd pit in early and see if I can get the undercut.
Now, we don't remember seeing any sort of replay or incident on track, and there seems to be quite a big divot on the nose of your car. What caused the damage?
Yeah, I was going around a lap car on the fast chicane, the left-right, and he was going to let me pass him on the right, but I went left and unfortunately hit him. But thankfully, he was not injured or the car did not spin, and it was all good.
So kicking things off with a win here today, obviously ideal situation, getting maximum points. What does this do on setting the tone for the season? Are you letting this kind of color your expectations, or do you consider this more of a one-off?
Yeah, this is my first win, so I'm super happy about that. I just got to keep practicing, and the competition's really tough out there, but I'm looking forward to the next few races.
Well, congratulations on getting that maiden victory and a well-run race today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Kevin Hammond, your victor here in race number 1. He's followed home by Aaron Sunday, 21 seconds back, but still a great run, and Ewan O'Leary has caught up with him.
Welcome in, Aaron. Good to have you with us. Second place, and you just about hung on from Olin Murphy at the very end. Tell us about that battle in the final few moments. You had a shorter pit stop. You came out ahead, and you lost the lead, or you lost the position, then gained it back again. Tell us about what it felt like to be involved in that battle with so little time remaining.
Hey, can you guys hear me okay?
Oh, so we can't quite hear you at the moment. You're very, very quiet on our end at the moment. I don't know what's causing that, to be honest.
Hearing y'all, but it was a tough. I knew a bunch of people were much faster than me, so I tried to run it clean, just save my tires, and hopefully make it good at the end.
There we go, turned you up. I can hear you a bit better now. What about the start of the race as well? I mean, Barber is not a circuit that's known for being very wide or very easy to start on. But how did you find it? How did you generally find the first half of the race or so?
again, I just kept trying to save my tires. Sorry, I'm having microphone problems right now, but I just was trying to run a clean race and like hopefully make it to the end and be there at the end.
You certainly managed that, getting second place here tonight. Congratulations on that, and thanks for coming to chat to us as well.
Sorry, I haven't.
I don't think he can hear me very well. Oh, but that's on Sunday. Second place here tonight at Barber in the challenge class, and just behind him, Joe, was Olin Murphy finishing in third.
Indeed, we've got Olin with us, and well, Olin, you were in good company of bad things happening to second place, except you weren't disconnected. Are you superstitious at all, or do you put that final mistake on yourself? Oh, we might not have Olin mic'd up. Third time, not a charm for us. There we now we hear you, Olin. We thought we did.
Can you guys hear me all right?
There, we got you, loud and clear.
There we go. Thank you.
So I was asking, you were not the first to have problems from second place today, but you avoided the disconnect that three other drivers did. Still, with this being Friday the 13th, or soon Friday the 13th, are you superstitious, or do you blame yourself for the final mistake in this race?
Not at all. I'm not superstitious. It definitely was all me. I had a bit of a rough start, a couple lockups that didn't go so well. Great racing with Aaron at the end there, but I just couldn't keep it on the track.
It did look like it was a tricky one for a lot of drivers. Going from seventh to third, you definitely had a lot of fast drivers in front of you. Did you expect this podium today, or did this come as a surprise?
Honestly, after the start I had, dropping back a few places, I didn't think I'd be able to catch up. But then after I started getting in my rhythm and kind of just calmed down and took it lap by lap, the time comes, you know?
Absolutely. And you'll need that consistency next time out when we go to Brands Hatch. How are you at that UK track?
I haven't really put too much time in it yet. Was very focused on Barber, but it's going to be cool to race in England, and I'm really excited for a wet race.
Absolutely. It's going to be very appropriate. That was Olin Murphy. Congratulations on the P3. So that wraps us up. And again, big thank you to everybody for such a great race. And you'll want to join us because we'll be back next week for Brands Hatch. Back with the Pro Class once again. Should be a fantastic time there on the 20th. In the meantime, a big thank you to the steering committee at PCA Sim Racing, as well as our team tonight, Ewan and Ramiro. And also thank you so much for watching tonight's broadcast of PCA Sim Racing. I'm Joe Peak. Race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.